Hey guys, this is George. Today I'm going to share with you the 4 main lease structures in commercial real estate and what the difference of each is. Okay, number 1 is absolute net. Absolute net is typically seen with freestanding buildings, usually national tenants, big companies that take on all the expenses. All the expenses include number 1, property taxes, property insurance, number 2, and number 3, all the property maintenance. Okay, so they're typically responsible for everything that has to do with the property. That means your landscaping, your parking lot restriping, your parking lot maintenance, the structure of the building, the roof, everything, interior janitorial, everything that has to do with the building. Okay, that's an absolute net. Okay, they pay all the expenses. Okay, number two is a triple net. Triple net is actually typically also seen with retail properties. You know, they're typically responsible for all the expenses as well. The 3 main expenses. Okay, that's what the 3 N's stand for. The 3 nets, which is property taxes, property insurance, and maintenance. So those are the main expenses. They're also seen with retail properties, also some industrial as well. You usually see here in South Florida, the new industrial buildings, they're also now structuring them in triple net leases. So that's very popular. The third one is industrial gross or modified gross leases. Okay, now these leases typically have the expenses are paid by the landlord, and usually the rates are a little higher. They're normally higher because of that. So the landlord is responsible for the property taxes, insurance, and the maintenance. What happens is with these types of rates is that with modified gross, what's very popular is that usually there's a base for property taxes and insurance at the time that the tenant signs their lease. So usually what happens is there's usually a clause in the lease that the tenant will be responsible for anything above base year. So anything above their base year for property taxes or property insurance, if there's an increase in that, then usually that gets passed down to the tenant. So usually modified gross leases, you'll see that very often in those types of leases. So that's usually very common in that. Now for modified gross leases, you usually see for waste management, the tenant usually is responsible for that. They're responsible for their own expenses, obviously their utilities, their internet, their interior janitorial. Also the HVAC, that's something that they're responsible for maintaining. Okay, so they hire a third party to go ahead and do the routine maintenance. So usually there's like an agreement between the tenant and the landlord where the tenant is responsible for maintaining the unit, but if the unit breaks down, the landlord will, if it breaks down and the tenant has been responsible enough to maintain it and keep its contract with their third party to maintain the unit, then usually the landlord will kind of do a 50-50 a split if it needs a new unit, if the unit needs to be replaced. So that's typically an agreement between tenant and landlord. That's always all negotiable. So that's very important. That's usually seen a lot in industrial properties. That's why they call it industrial gross. I believe it's because it's usually seen in industrial properties. The last one is full service gross, hence the name full service, meaning that the tenant gets pretty much all the services and on the responsibility of the landlord. So landlord will cover obviously all the 3 main expenses: property taxes, insurance, and maintenance, plus all their common area or interior janitorial. Okay, so they'll have obviously their hallways, their common area bathrooms or restrooms, the lobby, everything interior, and obviously electrical is also included in that full service. Electrical and water. What's not included in a full service is typically obviously the internet and any specific services that the tenant has to that needs for their business, for data or some usually those types of services. Landlord does not cover that, but everything else, exterior, the structural, everything falls on the landlord. It's the landlord's responsibility. So typically you see these rates a lot higher. They're very popular in multi-tenant large office buildings. Usually there's 1 meter, so that's the reason why the full service gross lease is popular in these types of assets. Again, those are the 4 main lease structures in commercial real estate. Obviously there's others, but the 4 main popular ones are those 4. There's also, you're also going to hear of different types of leases like double net or single net. So there's different types of structures, but the 4 main ones I would say are those. Again, if this was helpful, feel free to share, like, send to a friend, a business owner who is looking to expand in space. If you need any assistance with this, obviously you can always contact me. Feel free to message me or email me. My contact information is easily accessible. So again, this is George Smith with Managed Real Estate Advisors.